Hello, everyone. My name is Brenna Rusk. I'm 18 years old, and I am a gold medal national portfolio winner for Scholastics, which is crazy, super honored, and it's been a blessing. Today, I will be presenting for the grief and art presentation. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's go ahead and present. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. This is Grief, Scholastics Navigating Grief by Brenna Rusk. For the presentation, for me, I personally find it kind of hard to navigate grief as a concept in general, especially relating to artwork. So this time around, I decided to kind of break it into a little acronym for myself. So in the first, kind of like getting to know me, who I am as an individual, a reflection, and then introspection, effectiveness, and then finally follow through. Just a little bit more about me, just a little artist statement. Hello, I am an 18-year-old creative. As a young creative cultivating my artistic style in this modern day industry, I want to remind everyone about the power of our imagination. Art permeates the world around us, cultivating and developing cultural exchanges, expressions, and interactions. This only reinforces to me that I must do everything in my power to share my creative mind. Now, what is grief? The Google definition of grief is that grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. But in a more deeper, more personal aspect, grief could also be a sign that you miss what was. It could be a sign that love is persisting. It could be a longing for more. It could be frustration with what is, thinking of what could be, and guilt of what we should have done. It could also be a hope for better. Now, as for introspect, specifically in my artistic process, I'll be getting into what grief looks like in my artwork in particular, and maybe you can take some keynotes away that might be able to influence your own artwork and writing. A large part of my artistic expression revolves around civil rights and a fight for change. I tend to focus on subtle expressions of day-to-day challenges within minority groups and youth growing up in this current climate. Grief normally resides in some form of fashion within the topics surrounding my art. Having an open mind and a will to learn is an integral part of making artwork and confronting grief. Now, on the left, you'll see an example of one of my many art journals where I'll kind of like scribble down thumbnails and kind of just like ideas of the titles of my pieces. And oftentimes, like I gather like African proverbs together to kind of relate them back to the topic that I want to be illustrating. Making art is one of the most powerful kinds of historical note-taking that we have. We have to make art to document every step of life. I was thinking kind of about this earlier. I realized that art is one of the few forms of like conversation that we have that's almost like anyone can speak it. Like even if we don't speak the same language or don't have the same interactions or say you're hard of hearing, like art is one common way to express anything. Now, getting into my artwork. So for the first two pieces that I have to present to you, I have Eye for an Eye and then Oh Cheyenne. Something that you'll notice in my artwork is I'll oftentimes use quotations to mimic a conversation that's happening within the piece of art itself. So as for meditation, I kind of get into what's the mood that I'm going for the piece. I'll oftentimes ask the subjects of my work, like when I'm taking photos, I'll ask like, my friends or family members to kind of think on the subject matter at hand. So for Eye for an Eye, I referenced an African proverb, which is pretty common. It's basically saying eye for an eye. You've probably heard eye for an eye and the world goes blind, or one of the more original versions of this is one man sees what another man doesn't. So through the height of 2020 through 2021, I reflected on the feeling of never quite feeling safe amongst those around me, almost an eerie paranoia that coats the existence of every minority group. So in this piece, I use clan imagery to kind of portray the being surrounded by people who you think like you can trust, who you can rely on, but truly they're all in cloaks and you never truly know who they are or what impact that they might have on you in the future. And the piece next to it, I have Oh Cheyenne. This is actually a really old photo of a very close friend of mine. This was her whenever she was younger, and I realized that a lot of the toys and kind of media that I grew up with was all kind of Eurocentric. So I never really grew up seeing artwork or movies or TV shows or Disney princesses that looked like me or reflected the struggles that I faced on a day-to-day life. So working on this piece gave me time to reflect on my growing up experience and the impact of societal standards had on me. At a certain point, it felt as though I was finishing this piece for little me. So as you can see in both these pieces, grief kind of helped me, it kind of helped me work through kind of the, not necessarily grief, but the effects of grief and the effects of like society and how they affect my mentalities. For my next pieces, I have Mama, which you see again, the quotation motif that I normally use, and Gossiping Stare. So also with this process of meditation, I did a couple thumbnail sketches and I reflected on kind of the mediums that I use have a lot to do with my artwork. So with oil pastel, you can really get, it's really messy, but you can really have a lot of kind of like brutal emotions. So like when I was working on this, whereas my typical medium revolves around like color pencil and watercolor and chalk pastel pencils, this was more of a medium that I felt that I had way less control over, which also has a lot to do with the subject matter. So the subject matter for this one is, this piece also helped me mentally navigate the resurgence of the civil rights movement in 2020. Most of the rapid deaths were being televised over our tiny electronic screens. So as most infamously, we know of the death of George Floyd, among with tens upon thousands of many others. And I really just felt like the emotions that I was feeling couldn't really be captured in such a small, just medium of motion like watercolor. I needed something like brash. So like I remember taking moments of time throughout working on this piece to kind of just like hover over the page as I was like doing those brutal motions of like trying to capture the texture. And then as it layers up, I was like, okay, a face could go here, the hand could go here, maybe it's fading, maybe they're gripping onto the phone screen. Also with this series of pieces that I did smaller graphite and oil pastel pieces to go along with them to kind of help me envision what I was going through. I also realized that a lot of the times, like seeing all these different faces of people who look like you going through such tragic events also kind of made me lose this weird sense of like individuality and how I was seen in society. So I kind of did this illustration of a figure and they're on the ground and there's like a paper bag over their head of like, we don't know who they are, we don't know what they're going through, we just know that they're experiencing some sort of grievance. And I kind of wanted to be like, anyone who's feeling these emotions of any group that you're in, you can put yourself in that position. As for the next piece, it was Gossiping Stare. I had a lot of fun with this one and this composition. I didn't put my I didn't I didn't put my reference photos in for this one because I had to get in a very awkward position in my bathtub, and it was really fun. But I enjoyed the process. This was one of my first big pencil pieces, so it has like a very near and dear place in my heart. Similar to Eye for an Eye, it also has to deal with that same sense of paranoia. This piece navigates the unease that comes with existing as a minority group in today's political climate. So one of the safest places in my household that I love is my bathroom. I will blast music and I will be in the bathroom for hours. um, so so I was like, it got to a point where in quarantine and at the height of that like kind of like resurgence of the civil rights movement, where I was like, I didn't even feel comfortable in my safest place that I deem my safest place, where it's like I couldn't even like close the shower curtain without feeling like my my movements or my personality wasn't being like judged or critiqued, even though there was no one around me and I was in my own home. The piece that I did with the follow-up piece that I did with this one to kind of explore the feeling a bit more was also graphite and oil pastel, and it's of the same clan silhouettes peeping through the same bagged figure as they're showering or going throughout their day-to-day motions. And finally, look at this, which is the piece right behind me. It's my love, it's my joy. I love it very much. This piece, kind of explores, I really wanted to include my friends because I realized that a large part of navigating grief and navigating just emotions in general comes with like a group of people, because we're not meant to navigate different things and feats on our like lonesome. It's always good to navigate them with groups or to grieve with others. But something that I also noticed is similar to the piece I did previously, Mama, a lot of the times these tragic events are passed around on our phones. So you'll be going throughout your day-to-day like time, and I'm sure everybody's on TikTok and Instagram Reels. You'll be scrolling and you see like some video of like a dog and a cat cuddling, and then like the next swipe you see like atrocities happening all over the world, and you just do the next swipe and you're back to puppies and kittens. But it's like, wait, didn't I just see, wait, okay. And it's that weird kind of mental back and forth that we all kind of experience and have with each other. So in this piece, the commotion, it expresses the commotion that comes with sensational events. It's always sticked with me. There's shock, concern, tragedy, and most of all, grief. This piece helped me to navigate the different expressions that come with all of these new emotions. With this piece, I had a lot of fun with the concept of doing such like a large piece of work with such a tedious medium like colored pencil, because it almost kind of made me think about like just the thinking and navigating of it all. It's such a huge, like grief is such a huge part of our lives, and it feels as if every step is just a smaller process day by day, but then eventually you'll overcome it. But I also, as for the style of the piece, I did it in an almost neoclassical art style. A huge inspiration behind this work was The Last Day of Pompeii, which is, if you haven't seen it before, run to Google right now and look it up. It'll blow your mind. There are so many different micro expressions, so many different like miniature stories that are happening with each character that's happening. So I'll go back to the last slide so you can see it further. But I have kind of just a guy nonchalantly like leaning against some of the garb. You've got people like looking at the phone like, oh my goodness, look at this, like what's happening? You've got people peeking behind the curtain like, ooh, what is, like, what are they looking at? What are they talking about? You've got some people who have much more disdain, like reaching like, hey, put the phone down. It all comes with everyone's different expressions to things. Because of how much things have been it's almost as if that these big large events have been made into almost like social media trends or social media phenomenons. So you look at like one thing and then you can so easily just turn your phone off and go about the rest of your day, which is a blessing and a curse, because we don't need to be surrounding ourselves with like life threatening things all the time, but we also need to take time to realize that these things do happen, and by turning off the phone and putting the phone down, you are minimizing how great the issue actually is. Then as for effectiveness, I like to take time after my pieces to reflect on like the work that I've done and how it's impacted me as an artist, not just physically, because it's important to take breaks with the hand cramps that you feel after working, but also mentally. So meditating on grief while I work throughout my piece helps me move through each step of the process. Diving into the mind of the subject matter I'm trying to illustrate allows me to better identify the different colors I should use and the different expressions I should emulate. So kind of referencing what I talked about with Mama, there were a lot of moments working in the piece where I realized that I couldn't get that same level of like aggression and emotion and motion that I felt with that medium with another medium like colored pencil or graphite. I kind of broke it into like a 1, 2, 3 step process. So I, number one, reflect on the subject matter. Number two, identify how it relates to me. And number three, illustrate my emotions. So sit with it, recognize the idea, identify how the idea relates to me, how it relates to others, how it impacts the colors on the piece. And then once I have that mentality noted down, then I go towards illustrating my emotions. And then on the right, you see just a reference image that I did a while back for one of my pieces. And then for finally, we have follow through. I find it hard to sit with grief as it relates with my artwork. I find that I'm most empowered when I discover how grief can flourish and blossom into other facets of life. Grief can change into motivation, determination, and a will for others to do better. Though we are constantly in a never-ending fight for change, we must also never give up the fight for education. We have to learn our history to prevent future disasters. Sitting with grief has allowed me to share that same mentality with others. Heavy, bolded on we have to learn our past history to prevent on future disasters. That includes reading, going to museums, not just looking at the artwork and interpreting, but read the little note cards, research the artist and find out what the artist was trying to portray. Like, for instance, with Last Day of Pompeii, yes, it looks like a really cool piece, but think about and research the emotions that the author and artist has to like offer and is trying to express to us as the viewer. And yes, our interpretations are important, but a lot of the times, especially whenever it comes to looking into the minds of different minority groups and different groups in general, it's hard to look and understand what a group of people are saying without listening to them, hearing the things that they've gone through, then taking time to have empathy, sympathy, and really sit with the things that they've gone through so that you can truly understand the things that they're saying to you, so that you can then go and spread the word and educate others. So, with all that being said, what does grief look like to you? Does it look like a color? Does it look like a sound? Any kind of pattern in general? Maybe like for me, whenever I see grief, I kind of like, whenever I think grief, I think of like the like spikies, like those spiky circles. I don't know, like the initial shock. So what does grief look like to you? I see someone says dark colors, loud crashing sounds, trying to crawl out of a hole, a dark gray cloud, a lingering note. I like that. I love the piano. Black, almost devoid of color, an empty room, rain. Now, with all of these things being said, take note of these. Like, I find it really cool how everyone thinks of something so different. It's like we all have these different perspectives on how grief affects our lives and how it changes us. And now, knowing and seeing how it affects and changes others, take that into your mind. Think deeply of like, okay, this affects this person. Maybe it might affect me the same way too. A half painted canvas, that's good. That's a good one. That's a really good one. There's an artist that I'm thinking of that did a piece. Keith, I forgot who the artist is, but it's like they didn't get to finish the piece or it had something to do with, but yes, I love that. I love that motif in artwork. Frayed fabric. That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, yes, Connor.
That was an accident.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. I think of women and children suffering. Yes, Keith Haring. Yes, that is the one. That is the piece. That is the piece. Amazing, awesome. I remember the first time I saw that piece, I just yes. The first time I saw that piece, it was one of the few pieces that I've really just like the moment I saw it, I just sat with it. That's so impactful. It's another portrayal of grief that's like it made me understand what the person was feeling, learn, research the topics so I can further educate others, and then look into like, okay, how has this affected other people? How could this affect people in my personal communities? It's amazing. Yes, I love that piece. It means a lot. Yes, amazing. An empty room. Going back to that one works too. Empty rooms. I like how even like with our homes and like even like our artist studios or maybe our room is our studio. Or maybe we're sharing a room with family members or friends. It reflects kind of like who we are. So sometimes I'll be cleaning my room or whenever it is occasionally clean. um, I will be finding like little hints and trinkets from the past. So like maybe I'll see like an old shirt that I should have given away a long time ago, but I haven't because I don't know, it just means a lot to me. And it's moments like that that really make me want to go back and reflect on kind of like what I've been through, what I've gone through, what my future will look like, especially the transition between high school and college. I don't know if we have any, if we've got any college students in here. Any college students here? Go SCAD. I go to SCAD. We had just the transition of like leaving your home, like your home, like the bedroom that you've grown up in for like whether it be your whole life or part of your life, and then doing that transition from being in this room that you're always in to then migrating to a room that you're in for the next 4 years of your life. Of course, you visit home. You visit home when you have the opportunity over break, but it's like, what stuff do I take with me? What stuff do I put in my room with me? Take with me to college, and then it's the then transition of like being back home from break, and then being like, okay, I left that stuff there, but then now I'm back here. So you sit with that feeling again. You guys are saying all these really awesome artists, and I'm mentally screenshotting each and every single one of them. I will be doing a deep dive after this. All right, thank you so much. I wanted to ask a couple questions to the audience. As for, I always find this one a little bit difficult to kind of think about, but what are different sounds specifically that kind of relate to grief? I know oftentimes, like as an artist, I don't really tend to think, I've never really been a 3D artist, but whenever it specifically comes to 2D work, I rarely ever think of like an almost like four-dimensional aspect to the subject matter, or a three-dimensional aspect to the subject matter. But over these past couple months, especially being away at college and seeing how everyone interprets their interprets their different art styles and such, it's really been cool to me to see how everyone expresses their different ideas and passions. So whenever it comes to like work, I've seen like a lot of people do like fabric and different prints and then having like sounds behind them. Or whenever people do short films, especially with animation, like animation completely blows my mind. But it's always cool to, whenever you're stuck on one medium, branch out to others. So some people in the chat have said crying, a dog whining, thunderstorms, church hymns. That one's powerful. That one's very powerful. Screaming cries, silence, a loud bang, especially the initial impact. Or like sometimes the first impact is like, really? Did that actually happen? And then later, whenever you really sit with yourself, it's like, oh, that actually did happen. A ballad, people crying, silence, maybe no sound or no noise at all. A chair moving against a wooden floor, like nails on a chalkboard. Statics, waves or whimpers, sounds of nature, like birds. That one, I love that one a lot because sometimes grief doesn't always look the same way. I know earlier in my presentation, I mentioned it for about a second, but sometimes grief is like, of course, it's a sad thing, but sometimes that sadness makes you realize of where you need to go to move forward. So it's like you experience this like pain, this like emotion at first, but then it's like, maybe I don't want other people to go through this pain. Maybe I want other people to experience happiness, or maybe I've lived a great life and I want other people to live this life that I have who deal with this hardship of death all the time, or maybe this hardship of death is always surrounding them. Screaming a primal sound. Yes. Yup. Transitions between colors, the ideas of grief, the sound of breath, your own heartbeat, especially when you really about to like tweak out. You're like, oh my goodness, and you're sitting with yourself, moving with the wind. You feel the absence of their presence. Their name is like an unspoken curse. Oh, Yes, that one is really good. That is deep. That's very deep. Someone said like Batman's origin story. Yes. Yes, like Batman's origin story. What other questions do I have?
I told you how blown away you would be by their comments, right?
Yes.
I have to apologize. I got booted out for some reason. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, everything was just, and I couldn't get back in, so I jumped in on my other device. But thank you for going through it, reading all those. Right? Isn't it just amazing the things that telling you? You all give me hope for the future of the world.
Oh, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Like speaking from someone who's in like we're all in the same like group, we're all kind of like moving through these steps of life together. I find it encouraging when I see certain events happening around the world and I open the comment section and I see like everyone in unity to support, or everyone listing local businesses that we can go unite and uplift, or certain things or objects or items to buy so we can go forth and support each other, because it's like we might be in a current financially good position to support them, but they're not in a really good financially well position to support each other. So like it means a lot, especially like being in college and being surrounded by a lot of other like creatively driven like artistic individuals. It's super powerful to see everyone like uniting for change.
And having a group like this, like these webinars come together, I know so many of the participants then use this as a network to find other people that they can stay in communication with, because that's very powerful to have a group that you feel that support from, especially now, I think more than ever. But and I mean, I can't get over the fact that you're 18, Brenna. That just blows my mind that you are this well-spoken and have such an understanding of things that I just like, it gives me, it seriously does. It gives me hope for the world. My studio at my place, the staircase I've painted, our words have the power to change the world. And because I'm, a writer, so it's for me, but that's what I always told my students. And this group and everything that you're doing just solidifies that every time I'm involved with it, because you are all changing the world and the energy in the world. And that's really powerful. So thank you for being who you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everyone in the chat. I see so many kind words and remarks. Thank you. It means a lot to me. It motivates me to move forward. As someone who's sitting here and reading the chat, you guys are pushing and inspiring me. And I know you guys are also pushing and inspiring the other panelists on the webinar as well, because we're all moving through all of this together. So yes. Especially if you're sitting on this webinar right now, if you took time out of your evening to come and sit and be a part of this, snaps to you, because that means that you are looking to not only benefit and better yourself as a person, but also looking to better benefit your artwork and other people around you. Because like I mentioned in my presentation, it takes like yourself learning and becoming educated to educate others. You can't go around the town like Paul Revere, like spreading false information and then hoping for better things to happen.
So there's a question in the chat, and I think it's geared more towards the Institute, but I think it applies to you and what you do as well, Brenna. I'm trying to read. I'm on a different device now, so my screen is different. I think it's Yilin. Could artwork be based on literature? Does it have to be 100% original? I think that's geared towards submitting, but I feel like a lot of artwork, written, and what you're doing, I mean, do you want to speak to that? I know you've talked a little bit about what you base your artwork on, but do you ever base your artwork on literature? I mean, you said African proverbs and things, correct?
Yes, I think that it's so very important to take inspiration for your art from things outside of your medium. So a lot of the times whenever it comes to like my pieces, I'm really inspired by different like different movies. Like I love Basic Answer. I love Wes Anderson. It's very cool. Very cool artwork. Very, very colorful, very beautiful, or different directors. Like there's this one very not necessarily niche, but there's this one director for a lot of the Star Wars films. Her name is Deborah Chow. She's very amazing, and she covers a lot of not even just she covers a lot of like fragility in general, of just showcasing like it's okay to show emotion. And as a visual artist, it's good to take inspiration from other things outside of your own mind, especially whenever it comes to like reference images and such. So like going throughout a film and then not only just sitting with um sitting with the artwork and how it physically looks, but also taking in how it makes you feel. And then it's like, okay, well, how does this emotion look for me to illustrate? Or how does this emotion look for me to type up in like a paragraph? It's like you can always find real world inspiration from sitting and talking with other people or different forms of media. I also saw a comment in the chat that said, I hope, basically saying that they hope they become a better artist over time. I hope that you know, and I want you to know that it takes so much time to be okay with who you are presently, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying this to sound like depressing or anything like that, but as an artist, like it's hard to like sit in an artwork and be like, yeah, I did that. Because I know oftentimes it's like even like artists and like writers, we sit back and we look at something that we spent hours on and we'll sit and we'll nitpick something. So the nitpicking is it's never gonna stop. We're all like perfectionists at heart. It's never gonna stop. But what will stop in the art making process, if your desire to create, if you create for anything but yourself, then the desire to create artwork will dwindle and you will progress slower over time. So as long as if the desire to make artwork is different, of course we all need to make money. We all need to make money. Yes, of course. But when when your desire to make art, it loses your personal passion for it, then it becomes hard. So always keep that in mind. As long as you want to make art, you will always improve and you will always be better. You will always get better.
Well, even with your art journals that you shared, I refer to myself as a writer. I play around with different art things, but keeping a journal like that is in and of itself a piece of art. Those journals that you have, when you're my age, you're going to have those to share with, yourself, and look back at where you were when you were only 18 or when you were 15, because I'm presuming you've been doing these for a long time, right? And I can scribble with the best of them, and you may not know what I was drawing, but I will know what I was drawing. And even as a writer, like to visit, like I go to the Detroit Institute of Arts, and I bring my journal with me, and I use the art, but also I read the little cards because there are writing prompts for me in there. And you do write and create based on the emotions that it makes you feel and helps you feel. And to keep journals like that, whether you feel like you are, good enough, I don't think any of us ever feel like our work is good enough. I'm 59 and I can look at things that I've had published and I can still go back and redo them. I think we're all like that with our own work. So giving ourselves the grace to acknowledge that, and your encouragement, I know, will go a long way for these young artists as well. So you're very inspiring as I'm reading through the comments.
Thank you so much.
Somebody asked Sarah, how long have you been doing art related to activism?
I think that my art really started taking this shape when I entered kind of like 10th grade. So kind of like around just getting into high school area. Um, my traditional art normally takes more of that um activism approach, kind of because of like the hands-onness of it. As for like entering high school, I kind of, well, to be honest, to be fair, entering high school, I realized that I had like two very strong passions that were in the art community deemed as two different polarizing like pathways. So one passion that I have is for like well, both have to do with storytelling. I love storytelling. I love stories. But both pathways had to do with storytelling, but in different formats. So for traditional art, I loved telling a message of kind of like the walking into the Museum of Art in your local town or the town nearby and seeing like standing in front of a painting and like really taking it in the traditional sense. But another part of me almost like satisfying like a more childlike joy in myself really, really, really loves like visual development and character design and having a strong passion towards like making a character, pushing them towards the different stories, like the writer in me. I love sitting with like even Dungeons and Dragons, sitting with these different characters and almost pouring my own like grief or emotions or happiness in these characters and watching them go throughout these different stories. Also with traditional art, I've noticed it almost takes on more of a lonely path, especially whenever it comes to you sitting on a piece and working on your collection of pieces, but especially whenever it comes to making a story or an animation or making like a comic book or a graphic novel. Oftentimes you're working with a team. I love working with other people and getting other people's perspectives and creative ideas. So whenever it comes to specifically graphic novels, not many people know that oftentimes instead of using a font for the speech bubbles, they often have a career called like a letterist. So that's someone who actually takes the time to write out each of the individual speech bubbles. You oftentimes could also have someone who also known as a typographist. You also have people who do the coloring. You have the people who do the line work. You have people who work on the cover. And then you also have writers behind the scenes who work on the story, really formulate that all together. And it's when that one team comes together with these at first different varying artistic expressions and kind of ideas for how the story should take place, the one thing that they're united with is passion. So at the end of this process, you've got this awesome piece of work or this awesome novel or this awesome like animated movie or feature film that is the production of so many different artists' minds united by passion, which could be led by grief or happiness or moral support. It's amazing. It's awesome. I hope that answered the question. I kind of went a little off track.
We're all about tangenting here. It's all good. Did you have other questions that you wanted to ask them? Or if any of the participants have other questions for Brenna, put them in that chat and we'll make sure that she gets them.
Yes, I'm open to answer all questions, even art college related questions. I'm down to answer those as well.
How long did the piece behind you take from like
3 months? Yes.
You did that in 3 months?
Yes, it was 3 months of, and I you can really see it on camera, but I like to call them my war scars. I have like a hardened callus on my inner thumb because I was I was trying to finish it for a deadline in Texas. We have different art competitions, and we have this one art competition called Vase, and I was really trying to get it done in order for that deadline. But yes, I'll put my hand up next to it. It's 22 by 30 inches, and it took a lot of effort.
Well, I can't believe you were able to do that in 3 months. That's insane.
Thank you.
Like
you.
I'm doing NaNoWriMo right now, which is National Novel Writing Month, and 50,000 words in, 30 days. And I can't imagine doing that in three. Can't imagine being able to do that at all. But that, how long does it, like, if you weren't going for the competition, how long would something like that normally take you?
I would love to have spent about a year on it.
Okay. Okay.
I would love to have like taken my time. There are a lot of spots which, like I said earlier, we nitpick a lot as artists.
Yeah.
There are a lot of spots in which I wish I would have taken like more time on. Like if I could go back and rewind the clock, then I would. But I almost feel like the time crunch kind of like bettered the piece, because if I
Yeah.
had that full time to work on it, it would have been like, oh, I could change this or I could tweak that. But no, it was like, no, you need to get this done now. Yes, my
Yeah.
teacher had a lot of grace with extending that due date for me.
Have you submitted to Art Prize in Grand Rapids, Michigan?
No, I've not.
They have people that come from all over. You should check that out. Somebody asked, Sarah asked, says, sorry if this is too personal, but what is your first vivid memory of grief and how did it take hold of your life?
My first.
And feel free to pass if you don't want to answer it. That's
Oh
fine.
no. I'm so down to answer. My first vivid memory, I feel as if like deaths of loved ones have always been super impactful. It's less of the passing part, because that's something that I've accepted as an individual. It's like everybody has their time, then everything goes. But it's another thing to see how much their impact has on the people surrounding them. Or even seeing their house or their room afterwards, or seeing the people who were close to them afterwards. Even people or like animals and pets a lot can also have a lot of impact. I have not lost a pet except for my fish Azul back when I was younger, which I still think about regularly. I've seen like friends and like families like lose like pets and stuff, and it's like you see them, like you pick them up whenever they're younger, you get them from like the shelter. But I also think that pets are a really good way to teach especially younger kids about the aspects of like coming and going and stuff. Yeah.
Ace wants to know, did you get lessons or are you self-taught?
Self-taught from, I say self-taught with YouTube Academy. I love YouTube. YouTube University, they say. And my mom too. My mom is a graphic designer, so she would oftentimes give me she'd give me like little like art books and stuff like that, and she'd be like, here, look at this, it's anatomy, and I'd be like, cuckoo gaga, and she'd be like, yes, good. So I loved a lot of art books. I love art books, especially art books from animated movies and TV shows. Maybe like Arcane and Spider-Verse are really good references, and The Wild Robot, which came out pretty recently.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. Anna asks, after completing an art piece about grief, how do you write about it in your artist statement or carry through your message? I think that's a great question.
Oftentimes, what's our artist statement? My artist statement normally sits around conveying a message. Specifically the one of like, I want for people to be seen in my artwork. Whenever it comes to writing about my piece, I oftentimes find it easier to write about the piece as I'm working on it, because I know a lot, especially with like high school artists entering competitions, or even whenever you're older entering work for competitions, you finish the piece and then it's like the day of and you're trying to submit to do at 11:59 and you're like, oh, I gotta hurry up and write something. But it comes a lot easier whenever like you're sitting with the piece and you kind of like step back and look at it. So like the description that I had for this piece was like in the midst of like someone like pulls out their phone. I almost wrote it almost like narratively, like someone whips out their phone and screams, hey, look at this, which is when I was like, oh, that would be a good idea for the piece.
Yeah.
I was like, I was sitting at my desk and I was like, oh, that would be so good. That'd be really good. But a lot of it kind of just, it takes time. whatever you're kind of like rushing the name of the piece or like kind of the description of the piece for a deadline, it can be hard. Sometimes, depending on what it is, I'll kind of like shift, I'll base the description of the piece around the kind of like what the thing that I'm submitting it for is asking for. But if I'm doing it for myself, I'll oftentimes change I won't sit with like a name of the piece and like keep it as that name forever. Like in a moment I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, this could be this title. And then later I'll go back and I'll change it. But it really just depends on your own personal process.
Okay. Shadira, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asks, mentions that you talked about colored pencils being your favorite medium. Do you have tips or techniques for using them? And then kind of following with that, we're getting questions. Do you have favorite brands for oil pastels and paints? Because people are making wish lists.
That's really good. That's really good. I don't have I Prisma. Sorry, my parents are my support system. They're sitting on the side. Prismacolor for color pencil, ride or die, any and always. Now as for techniques for color pencil, I almost treat it like, you know, like whenever you do like a wash on a painting. If you don't know, a wash is kind of whenever you do the underpainting. So you take like a color, or like say like I want the piece to have like a cool vibe to it. So I'll do the underpainting in blue and I'll put on all like I'll fill in where the shadows are with the color. That same technique can be applied with color pencil the same way. So as you'll notice on the I'll go back to it here so it's easier to see. With the piece, you'll see like a lot of different color changes, and that's because whenever I was building up the color over time, I started with an almost like I think I used like a red like color pencil to kind of go in, and not any like harsh like strokes like that, but just really light, a consistent small circular motion, so that way the color builds up on each other over time. Because with Prismacolor, it gets really waxy really quick, and the moment it gets waxy, you can't really add anything else on top. So it all depends on the blending that you do prior to it getting waxy, and then once it gets waxy, then you get the cool almost painterly finish.
And then I'm assuming you learned more about that on YouTube University.
YouTube University. Yes.
We have a couple of questions here specifically about grief. Gina and Anna are asking, can abandonment be considered grief? Is rage considered grief? I would say yes. Like all the emotions really jumble into grief.
I agree.
That say, well, because there, you know, it used to be other stages of grief, and having gone through so much of my own serious grief, and the kids that have been following me know that I lost my son in 2010, and then I lost my brother in 2020. So all those emotions are part of grief, and they don't go one to the next to the next. Sometimes they're all in there in a 5-minute span, and you just have to roll with it and know that it's going to settle down, and you can take a breath and you just keep going. But I think all of that, and I saw a lot of that represented in your artwork, Brenna.
Yeah, I agree with you. Abandonment heavy. It's like it's that sitting of like, even whenever it comes to like friendships or people that you've met, it's like you sit with them and you meet with them. And I had a friend while I was in college. I like called her because I got a little homesick, and we were talking, and I was like, it's hard to make friends in college, and I feel like the friends that I made back in high school are kind of like, it's like some of their like the different relationships that you thought that you met, they're fleeting. And she made a good point. She was like, the people like they come into your life and they impact it while they're there, and then everybody has a time where they have to go, whether that be physically go or whether that be emotionally leave your life, or like even with friendships you have like betrayals and losses and such. So I do believe abandonment and rage can be considered grief.
Mm-hmm. Lots of people are asking if you have Instagram, whatever. How can they follow your artwork, Brenna?
I need to get way better at posting on social media, but I can type, oh, I do have a website. But I can type that in my social media and such in the chat so that you guys can follow me.
What is your website?
My website is brennarusk.com. There you go.
There you go, everybody. I have a feeling that you are going to have a lot of hits on that website coming up here.
Yes, I hope.
Vouch for me that I will be one of those people.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And then my art Instagram account. On Instagram. And then I'll be updating that one shortly. I have separate ones for my traditional and digital, but over these next like 2 weeks, over the time that I'm at home, I really plan on posting and getting super active out there. But you'll see all the updates that I have on that account.
Any other questions? You guys have been fantastic once again. Oh my gosh, I highly encourage all these participants who I know are writers as well to use Brenna's artwork for writing prompts and everything that you've shared here tonight, Brenna, I think is so inspirational for everybody to keep writing and to keep leaning into each other. I'm like, how are you 18? Your parents must be insanely proud. Do they just like walk around with like your art on their shirts and carry it around and be like, my daughter did this?
They might as well. Yes, they pretty much do. Yes,
if they're not, they should. If they're still over there listening, yes, congratulations for raising such an amazing young woman.
They are my biggest cheerleaders and supporters. I feel like they would come to my silent auction with megaphones and blowhorns.
Yes, as they should. Connor, is there anything else you need to get across to anybody before? It looks like the questions have, well, somebody asked about comics, if we still have a couple minutes. Have you ever done comics?
Yes, I love graphic novels. That's actually my my major in college right now is illustration. My minor is minor is sequential arts. I actually did for my senior year, I did we did senior art show, and my class, we really wanted to do like kind of like a zine, which is like a magazine or such, which is basically just like a kind of like homebrew short telling of a story for anyone who doesn't know. So I organized and I put together a little comic book for my my class, and we all worked on the cover and we did like the packaging and everything, and each of us took time to do like our own favorite memory from senior year, and it was amazing. So this is the front cover and then the back cover, and then I got fake reviews from each of the people in my school. So like from a fellow art kid, someone said, "This is insanely sick," and then someone said, "Dude, I'm so excited for this." Then each artist got this is the front page. I illustrated 2 of the teachers that go to our school. The top one is my beloved, most amazing art teacher in the world, Miss Rodriguez. And then Mr. Hayes, which was our psychology teacher, and he was amazing. Then all the artists were listed here, and then each artist got a different page, and we all illustrated a different story from our favorite moment. This was, my page is kind of flipped, but I basically did the time where we have this event at our school called Art Attack. And it's where we each artist kind of goes head to head, and I already did it like a head to head in a competitive event, and I did it the year before. So I was like, I kind of don't want to do it, but I'm super extroverted. So my teacher was like, yeah, you can get up stage on and you can MC. And so I wore this giant inflatable alien costume
Well, of
where
course you did.
and my friend Kennedy, which is actually the girl who's in the piece for Oh Cheyenne, she acted like she was like a skeptic, like she wore like the tinfoil hat, and she brought like a big giant like pot and like a wooden stick. She was banging it on the stage, and so I was like, the aliens, they're real. But I was maybe like 45 minutes late because I was trying to get the costume on right. Um, so I did a comic about how I was like taking my time, and I was like, oh, I'm 45 minutes late. She's like, where are you? And like the door cracks open behind me, and it's the alien, and the alien kidnapped me. And that's why I was
That's a good reason. Yeah.
and she's like, where are you? And then I pop up and I'm like, oh, hey guys. Sorry I was late. And then another comic I did was, this one was super fun. I was asked by my school's yearbook to kind of like, or the theme for our yearbook was like comics and stuff like that. So I did a comic book cover for our school yearbook, and our mascot is the Phantoms. So I did like the Phantom from like Phantom of the Opera, super cool, super cringy, but super fun. So I did like kind of like a mariachi kind of like Phantom mascot thing, and it was really fun. It was like paint the future, and it was limited edition. And then I put little notes for the future, and I put like May 30th, which was our graduation date for the issue. And then on the back I put like a little description and drawing of our school and such. But I love comic books because in my brain they are like the final medium. Like they're like, once you've mastered everything, they're like, not only do you have to have a good understanding of composition and page flow, but you also have to have a good understanding of visual development, so character design, storytelling. There's a, if anyone's in this call is into any Japanese media, there's an artist called Shirahama Kamome, and she did this really amazing series called Witch Hat Atelier, and her line work, her technique, her characters, her storytelling, her world building, all of it coming together. And you have to keep that same medium consistent for pages on end, books on end. And whoever said the comics in the chat, yes, very underrated medium. It's viewed as a dying art because there's not much attention put to comics as much as there is to animation and like live action films. But read comic books, they're amazing. The another series that I could recommend is if you're into Marvel or DC, of course Spider-Man, of course, love Spider-Man, but DC, there's a Batman runoff series called Dylan Dog, and there's an artist who the name is slipping me right now, but his style is so very unique. Yes, I love comics. Yes.
Yeah, what a great note to end on. I love your enthusiasm.